Hi, my name is Gustavo. I will talk about of the mosaic effects of growth hormone and the fibrous dysplasia of bones. So we have the definitions in this place. There is that the fibrous dysplasia and the McCune-Albright syndromes constitute a rare mosaic disorder caused by a somatic activity mutations of the G-alpha S. That the G-alpha S is the same that the G protein in the subunit alpha. So we have that some manifestations of some characteristics in these patients is that they usually have a coffee-like skin lesions. So including the fibrous dysplasia of bones and the hyperfunctionality of the endocrinopathies. So this, these syndromes occur with a varying severity depending on the embryonic state at which the mutations occurred. The mutations early in the embryogenesis results in multiple affects tissue, where later mutations results in more limitations functions or manifestations. So we have this syndrome, and now we have a video that explains better the definitions of this illness.
Liam is a 5-year-old and he has a rare bone disorder called fibrous dysplasia. It forms fibrotic tumors throughout his bones. He also has a second condition called rickets, so it makes his healthy bones very prone to fracture.
When I first met Liam, he was about 18 months old. He was not walking, not feeling well, and now he is a different kid.
IBJI is in the forefront of treating bone disease and fractures. If we hadn't gone to IBJI, he would have either not healed correctly or been in a lot of discomfort for quite a long time.
The fun part about doing pediatric orthopedics is I get to see them grow. And for someone like Liam, where the diagnosis was unknown initially, to watch him go through the process, he's doing great.
Now we have the next point, that is the applications in medicine. So the applications in medicine, we have that the human's growth hormone can use for the following: that is, the increase the exercise capacity, increase the bones density, increase the muscle mass, and decrease the body fat. So the human body hormone treatment is also approved to treat adults with a growth hormone deficiency related to AIDS and HIV, which causes an uneven distribution of body fats. So these applications is not the same that in the syndromes that we almost already know now. Now we have a video about these applications in medicines and other definitions of the McCune-Albright syndromes and the fibrodysplasia.
Fibrous dysplasia is a tumor-like developmental condition characterized by proliferation of abnormal cellular fibrous connective tissue with irregular trabecular bone replacing the normal medullary bone. This condition occurs due to mutation in the GNAS gene encoding for the alpha subunit of G protein. Fibrous dysplasia affects or involves one bone or multiple bones, sometimes together with endocrine abnormalities and abnormal pigmentation. G proteins are specialized proteins which can bind to nucleotides GDP and GTP. G proteins associated with G protein couple receptors have three subunits, namely an alpha, beta, and a gamma subunit. In the absence of a signal from a ligand, GDP attaches to the alpha subunit. Whereas in the active form, that is, when a ligand binds to a G protein coupled receptor, there is an exchange of GDP for GTP. This GTP is utilized by the alpha subunit of the G protein to activate adenylyl cyclase, which in turn produces cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP further activates protein kinase A, which leads to phosphorylation of the target molecules. Normally, the alpha subunit of the G protein has an intrinsic GTPase activity, leading to deactivation of adenylyl cyclase and a breakdown of the cyclic AMP. But in fibrous dysplasia, GTPase activity in the stimulatory alpha subunit of the G protein is affected by mutation of the GNAS gene. Hence, this leads to continuous stimulation of adenylyl cyclase to produce an increased cyclic AMP, which further leads to an increased activity of the respective cells or tissues that are stimulated by cyclic AMP. So, how does this mutation affect cells and cause the disease? An increased cyclic AMP could result in an abnormal differentiation of the marrow stromal cells to immature osteoblasts and hyperproliferation of these immature osteoblasts. Alteration of the bone matrix proteins resulting in production of abnormal and immature bone. Activation of CFOS to stimulate the production of bone resorbing cytokines like interleukin 6 and interleukin 11. Abnormal pigmentation due to an overproduction of enzyme tyrosinase. And various endocrinopathies due to hyperplasia and excessive function of different endocrine cell types. Now, if these mutations occur during an early embryonic development affecting the pluripotent stem cells, it could affect multiple cell types like the osteoblast or the melanocyte and the endocrine cell, resulting in a polyostotic fibrous dysplasia or a McEwen-Albright syndrome. However, if the mutations occur in a later stage of embryonic development, it may cause more restricted pathology. That is, it may affect only a single cell type, and if the cell type happens to be an osteoprogenitor, then it may result in a monostotic fibrous dysplasia. Under the microscope, fibrous dysplasia primarily consists of a slight to moderately cellular fibrous connective tissue stroma with areas of immature trabeculae of bone. These trabeculae of bone are scattered throughout the lesion with no definite pattern. They are thin, C-shaped and resemble Chinese characters. Osteoblastic rimming is usually absent or minimal but may seldom be present. In the later stages, the immature woven bone may become mature lamellar bone. At the periphery, the lesional bone may fuse with a normal bone.
So now we have another point that is the pros and cons of this treatment. So the pros is that the growth hormone treatment exerts beneficial effects on body compositions, inducing decrease in fat mass and increase in lean mass. So another pro is that the skeleton increase the bone's mineral density. So finally, we have the cons. The cons is that not all the growth hormone treatment induced change in the body compositions are favorable. So sometimes this waist and body mass index increase significantly in some studies. And the secondary effects derived from the water retentions caused by the growth hormone treatment occurs in the 5 and 10% of the patients. They consist of edema, arthralgia. Sometimes they can present myalgia, paresthesia, and carpal tunnel syndrome, for example. Okay, now we have the another point, that is the applications in Ecuador. So we have that the applications of this treatment can be used for the idiopathic short stature. Some studies have found an increase in height in children treated with recombinant growth hormone that is effective in Ecuador because there is a high rate of short people. Okay, there is some applications that we can use in this country. And the conclusion, finally, we have that um, the amount of the uses of growth hormones, there is an increase in the production of bone cells that during the dysplasia could worsen the symptoms present in the patients. Therefore, the use of growth hormone in the pathology is not broadly indicated.